Welcome to Now That's Bass. I'm Pete Roythorne, and this is your weekly dose of bass insights. Thanks for joining us, and feel free to share your own insights and experiences in the comments. Welcome back to the Now That's Bass podcast. My guest today is a session bassist who's worked with artists including Skin, the Blockheads, Shy FX, Owen Paul, Nitin Sawhney, Rob Brydon, Steve Rogers, and leading UK blues artists Danny and Will Wild. He's also recorded with several renowned producers, including Ken Nelson of Coldplay, Gordon Raphael did The Strokes, and Tim Basil of Duffy. Mr. Russell Carr. Welcome, Russell.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Right, I'm very happy to have you on here. I mean, particularly, so there's a few things in your kind of in your CV that I'm kind of intrigued by. One of which is the Blockheads. I mean, how is it stepping into a role and playing? I mean, there's some iconic bass lines in there. Norman Watt-Roy was phenomenal. How is it walking into his sort of filling shoes like that?
Well, you don't try and fill them. You just sort of. You just sort of play the lines best you can. Yeah. It's a privilege, really. I mean, he was always one of my sort of childhood heroes. And I think the more you get into his lines, it's not so much, I mean, everyone knows Rhythm Stick. I don't know, what a waste. I mean, great riffs. But it's the way he plays some of the parts. Just the little bits of articulation, the little slides, the little hammers. Just really musical. And some of the best ones are just dead simple. There's like nothing. And that, I think, is the trick for, if you're thinking about pop music, as in popular music generally, that's the holy grail, I think. Like, we'd all love to write Walking on the Moon or something. It's like 3 or 4 notes and it's killer. And I think he had that down. People talk about his, it's a bit like the Jaco Pastorius thing. We look at all the technical side of it, I guess, but actually it's the groove and the way they play simple lines that I think is the most sort of inspiring. And that's the hardest thing. I think if you see another, for drummers perhaps as well, any musician playing parts, it's not so much, click on YouTube and you get a sea of shred. But what really impresses, and I think is the hardest thing to get right, is just playing that simple stuff really well. I mean, our mutual friend, the reason I'm here really, Smiley Barnard, great session drummer. First time I had him play, I can remember, because I'm lucky to work with lots of great drummers, and it's when sound check and they just go boom, tack, poof, and cap, and you go, oh yeah, that's all right. Yeah. It's a couple of notes. Yeah. It's not chops really.
Yeah. No, it's funny. It's like his Smiley was mentioning Smiley. His thing I always remember about him, and the thing that I can always tell, even if I'm blindfolded, I was so spent a long time playing with him. And I can tell his snare drum. I can tell the way he hits a snare drum. It's the way you kind of feel it in your back when he hits it.
Yeah, and it's the same with great bass players, isn't it? I think it's like it's their touch, it's the sound. I don't think you can even analyze it. It's like the sound, the placement. You feel it. Is the word, I think.
And so tell me, just there's a couple of other things in there, because that's a really cool CV. I mean, obviously, I know Owen Paul. He's a lovely chap. You've worked with Skin as well.
Yeah, only briefly, a long time ago, before she reformed Skunk Anansie. That was the sort of first, I don't know, like proper gig I sort of did.
Okay.
And it was just a one-off gig, and then some recording, a little bit of TV. It was great. I mean, I was pretty wet behind the ears, really. And she's, quite a force of nature, amazing performer.
Yeah,
you wanted in the studio. It was a great experience. It was good to sort of be dropped in at the deep end, because didn't really get a rehearsal. No one rehearses now, right? No one's got any money. So to have to sort of do those kind of gigs just off the bat is terrifying, but really good for you.
Yeah. No, I vaguely know Skin from years ago, because when the band prior to Skunk Anansie was a band called Mama Wild, and it was like, I was actually in a record company at the time, and I indirectly knew the drummer, and I was trying to sign them basically, and she used to terrify me. She's just like, as you say, an absolute force of nature, but bizarrely incredibly nervous about going on stage. Or certainly was in the old days. I think she's probably not like that anymore. But yeah, no, fascinating character. But anyway, back to you. Where did your journey with bass start then? Tell me how you came to end up being a bass player.
It's nothing very weird. I was at a boarding school. I mean, this is at the 80s talking about, and I would have been like 13, 14. I think it was probably about 14. I was really into music, and some of my mates were in like a school band, and the guy who played bass and sang. It became my sort of my closest musical friend at school. He wanted to play guitar and write songs and sing. So, because bass is really easy, they just said, "Oh, do you want to come and play bass one day?" And I remember I had this. It was a Marlin Sidewinder. It felt massive. This bass, and we were playing Purple Haze, like sort of 3 notes on the E string, you know. But I remember the first rehearsal, and I just got hooked after that. Just couldn't stop. I think my parents thought it would be a bit of a phase, and whatever that is, 40, 35 years later.
Did you play instruments before, or was the bass your first instrument?
No. And to my shame, I still don't really play anything else. I've sort of tried to make myself learn some keys and guitar, but I think I got into double bass, which I don't play much anymore. I haven't gigged it for a long time. But once you get into that, it's such a world of pain and joy that you don't want to spend time doing anything else, because you want to. It takes so much work to get it up to speed if you start late. That's my excuse anyway. But no.
I'd love that. That's one. I think one of the big regrets, in a way, is one of my big regrets is because I played piano and clarinet when I was at school, so I learned to play those classically. Got to serve clarinet. I think I got to around about grade 7. So I did. I'd done reasonably well at it, and my dad was a clarinet player as well, so I was kind of forced into it. But then at like 16, 17, I went, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to play the bass. And actually, at that point, I wished that I'd had formal lessons rather than sort of picking it all up by ear, because I don't read.
I think a lot of people say that, but I think all the great players you've got to remember, particularly all the players that we probably listen to, you know, the McCartneys of the world, and I don't know. I mean, maybe not so much players like James Jamerson, because they were kind of school jazzers, but so many players, you know, were self-taught, and really, you know, it gets to a point very quickly when you need to be shown stuff, and then you go and find things out, and a bit of guidance, great. But if you're really into it, you're going to be self-taught anyway, because that's how it works. You eat it, don't you? You're hungry for it.
Yeah. I mean, these days it's interesting. I mean, certainly in my day, it was like, you know, you had to learn. Well, there were 2 options. You either learn everything by ear, or you picked up the music books and you read it. You know, it's like, and that's why, you know, all the sort of like, because I grew up playing to, you know, my big influences, I suppose, were Rush, Level 42, Stranglers, those kind of like types of, it was that era, those types of bass playing. And you didn't, you know, not like today when you can just go, I'll just Google how do I play this particular bass line, and then somebody somewhere has done some sort of lesson tutorial or video on it, and you just kind of like, and you can sit down and pick it up. And that's why, you know, I think that's why today we see so many of these people that are just phenomenal online.
It does make you a bit lazy, though. I think that I remember a guy that used to teach me years ago would talk about, you know, like wearing out records, just putting the needle back on to try and work out, you know, different tunes and that kind of thing. And that process, and all I read now really is, I think, music autobiography. And when you read about, you know, particularly the early blues guitarists, you know, when they'd heard, you know, someone on the other end of town had a different chord, and they'd like travel to a club to see the chord, you know, that kind of thing. I think just the sort of process of having to do that, in my mind, is more educational than just clicking on and looking at numbers, you know, on the screen. But it is great for the industry. It gets people playing, but you know, I'm not convinced it's the best way to, or the most musical way to go about learning.
True. Yeah, no, fair enough. That's very much a fair point. But so you've picked up the bass at school. You've joined the band at school. When did you kind of go, actually, I want to do something with this?
Well, I had quite a weird path in that I think when a sort of, you know, deluded teenager, particularly in a book, because that's your little world. You don't really know what the outside world's like. I think I just thought I'd leave school and be a rock star. And of course, you got no gauge about how good you are either. You just think you're really good.
Yeah. Mm.
So I think I left school at 18, and there was no. This was again very early 90s, 92 maybe. So there was no sort of pop music education colleges. It didn't exist. You couldn't go on and do it. There were courses, I think, but it wasn't really. I mean, it's not really a career choice now, really, is it? But there was definitely no sort of pathway that you could just step into. So I ended up kind of took a year out, went into education. So by this time, I'm sort of early 20s now. Went to university, had a great time, just did an arts degree in the Midlands. Had a brilliant time, drank myself silly, hardly touched the bass, and then left and thought, oh, I'm grown up now and I'm kind of nowhere. So I went for, and at that point, the first kind of, what we now, this is late 90s now. So I was sort of went into my 20s. And I couldn't really play, if I'm honest. I really couldn't, because I hadn't done any gigs. And that was it. Wow. So I went to, and the colleges started opening up. And there was one, like they were brand new, and it was the new thing you could do. So I went for like an audition and saw, for the first time, a really, really dynamite bass player up close. And I was just a bit of an eye opener, really, and sort of a bit of a shock. I thought, well, that's going to take me years. But then, went to college and just ground it out. So by the time I got into music, even sort of semi-pro, I suppose, it would have been late 20s.
Yeah.
And then, just gradually stuck at it. I mean, Smiley's great quote is, if you just stick at it for 10 years, you'll be all right. I think there's some truth in that. So,
well, there is that thing. It's the 10,000 hours thing, isn't it? It's like, if you put your 10,000 hours in, that's it. And I don't think many people do that. But so when did you really get your first big break, and what was it?
I'm not sure there was one. I mean, I did the Skin thing fairly early on, very briefly. And then just really since then, lots of bits. I've never been attached to one big touring band, and the way my life's set up, I don't think it would work now anyway. I certainly couldn't go away as much as some of the guys that I know who do, big tours, even if they were there on the off break. So I tend to do sort of, a few weeks, few days here at a time. But I'm since COVID, I think I'm full. I work full time at BIMM University, part of their performance team, and to think, now sort of accept that almost every musician has like a portfolio career, basically, which is a posh way of saying they do whatever it takes to make a living. And music's obviously a big part of that. And I'm quite fortunate in that. So when I took on the full-time thing, it was because there were no gigs. It was COVID. We all remember that. And and I think I thought I'd do it for a while, then stop. But actually, it's worked out really well because it's a creative arts place. I probably do more gigs now than I ever have. Gets a bit tiring, but it kind of balances out. And I think, before that, it was just lots of freelance gigs, bit of teaching. Just the usual sort of modern musicians path through life, and then you sort of. Things change, but you just kind of work out a way to keep it all hanging together.
Did you ever hit a point where you went, actually, I can make this work? This is what, or is it sort of like, is it just something that's just kind of evolved, and you, as you say, it's that pulling a portfolio of stuff together that ultimately helps you have a consistent income?
I think I'm not really qualified to do anything else now. I'm 51 now. I'm not going to retrain, and it's I don't think I'm just like, well, that's what I do. It's always been tough, isn't it? I mean, we can definitely. I mean, it feels uniquely strange and difficult now to be a musician or anything in creative arts, but I think it's always been tough. So, just being in the game and still doing it for a living was just, I think, always the aim. That was it. And once you realise that you're probably not going to be, in Led Zeppelin, it's just kind of, work with good people, work with decent human beings, and just keep it ticking over, and keep trying to progress to something better whenever you can.
I think that's you make an interesting point there. Is kind of like, I think there is that point of realization that. Yeah, I mean, whereas, as you say, when you kind of like, when you left school, you think, oh, I'm just going to be a rock star. When you realise that the percentage of people, I mean, the percentage of people that actually go out and end up in those and end up in the bands like Led Zeppelin, or sort of like, or whoever, is so small. It's almost like, it's probably, is it probably even less than professional footballers, isn't it?
Probably is if you worked it out. But I mean, I think actually, that's always sort of the holy grail, or people think it is. But I think it depends what you want. I mean, I quite like the variety and meeting lots of different people. And I think, maybe it depends what band you're in. But if you were doing one thing, I've definitely spoken to bass players, who do one thing a lot. And I've said, man, that must be great to do that great gig all the time. And they've kind of said, careful what you wish for. Because I think it does come with the drawback that you're a bit kind of stuck in that. And then with the politics and everything else. And, and if that band's not working, maybe you're not working, which is the other big problem. So I think everyone sort of carves out their own path, whatever works for your life and your mindset and the way you play.
And it's just touching back on what you were saying about that's sort of almost like getting careful what you wish for thing. I know through somebody else, I know the guy who's or I indirectly know the guy who's the bass player in The Who. So obviously, those are big shoes to step into, and you don't get to. You don't get to improvise. You play. You may as well be reading the dots for what it is.
For interestingly, like one of a very good friend of mine down in Brighton, he used to play for George Michael back in when in the real purple patch, of his career, and we were all like, wow, that is what a gig. For some of our generation, that was like, wow, that is as good as it gets. And again, the downside, if there was one, was that creatively, there was no creativity. It was like you play what George wants, and that's it. So, that suits some people. Maybe from the way we're talking, maybe it wouldn't suit us. But it's trade off between doing a gig of that profile and that level and those great songs. With and I think that's always going to be. There's never going to be. The thing you dream of when you're a teenager, being in the biggest band in the world, playing amazing music, and everyone gets on, and it's a party, and you're making music that you love all the time. Realistically, it's not like that. There's, things happen, things change. The industry's changing all the time, and then particularly over the last sort of 20, 30 years. So it's kind of, it's brilliant to be in music, but you've got to be realistic about what your expectations are.
Yeah, no, I think that's the thing is kind of that, and what I wanted to kind of get across the sort of or find out from all the people that I want to speak to about this is that sense of realism. It's like, if you do get that job or sort of the George Michael job, something like that, then it comes with. It comes with certain restrictions, but then if this is the job you want to do, that's kind of. I suppose that's kind of something you take that comes with the territory, isn't it?
Yeah. But it's always a downside.
Yeah. So how have you, over the years, kind of sustained yourself? I mean, obviously we've talked about the concept of portfolio of work and stuff like that, but how have you how have you got the jobs? How have you gone from gig to gig? For example, how did you get the Blockheads and stuff like that?
It's been through drummers, actually, recommendation a lot of the time. Blockheads, John Roberts, brilliant drummer that plays for them. I've known him for years. They just needed a dep. And previous to that, it's always word of mouth. For me, and I think everyone that I know of my generation, it's never social media. We all kind of have a sort of grudgingly use it, but no one really, unless they're pushing a product, tends not to really use that as what would the word be, the kind of calling card. It tends to be you just it's like I think you get to an age where if you were putting something together, whether it was music or I don't know, a football team, you want people who are good, but you want people who you like and who you out with as much as anything else. So there's a certain level of playing, but then it's just are they not nutters basically, and can they hang out? I think that's quite a big part of it.
But this is kind of interesting, because this is what I was talking to our mutual friend Smiley about last night, and is this thing that, there are, I suppose, three pillars that you need. You need to be able to play, you need to be professional, and you need to be good to hang out with. Now,
Yeah, I think,
you can probably sustain a career just about by having two of those. But the problem, as Smiley and I were saying, the thing is, it's like when you get to a certain level, if there are three people in a room going for a job, all those three people realistically are going to have all three of those things. They're going to be, they're going to know, they're going to be professional. They're going to be good players, and you can probably, be fairly certain that if they're all in the same room, they're going to be kind of decent to hang out with. So how do you stand out in that environment?
I think it probably depends on the gig. I mean, there comes to a point where, it's in the chemistry between you and the people you hang with, as in the people that are potentially hiring you. I think that the only good bit of advice I was given when I was at college, actually, was just make life easy for everyone. I think if they get the sense that there's not going to be any hassle with you, so you're probably, that's what no one wants any more hassle than doing gigs is anyway. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's probably the thing. Don't be any more hassle than you need to be. And the other one, there's a great Darryl Jones interview where he's talking about his parents, and he says what his parents taught him wasn't so much about music. They taught him that if you're hanging out, you haven't got to be part of every conversation. That thing where, especially if you're trying to sort of, what the word be, get in with a new group of people. It's a hard balance between sort of, making yourself known and understanding their kind of humour and what wavelength they're on, and being too quiet. So that thing of just thinking, I haven't got to be part of every conversation. There's so many times, and we've all done it, where you sort of say something in that kind of environment, you go, oh, fuck, I shouldn't have said that. Where, it's just being a bit savvy to that. But yeah, the main one is just make life easy for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I know, it's sort of like I've not really been at the level that you guys have been at yet, in terms of around the sort of the different bands. But I mean, things like I've noticed stuff when I've been for auditions just for covers bands of, the worst thing is when I find that it tends to be guitarists and drummers that are the worst for this. Bass players I've always found a reasonably kind of just go plug in, do your thing. But I've one band I've stood in depth for a little while. The drummer was just nuts. I mean, literally, she wouldn't stop playing. It was kind of like between any song, straight on it, straight back, and you're just like, for God's sake, just stop. And that thing of sort of like, if you, as you say, make life easy, you come in, you plug in, you make sure you're in tune beforehand, and you just plug in and play, and you don't sit there going, look at me, look how flash
that's
I am.
It. And I think it's things like, if something's going wrong and you're going to a gig or a session or whatever, and you're still at that point where you don't need to tell anyone, don't tell them, because you don't want them to know, oh, you might be late, or it might be wrong, or it's just stupid logistical stuff like being on time, remembering your paperwork, your passport, whatever, just stupid stuff like that. Just not being another thing to think about. No think about anything. They want to they've got enough on their plate. That's the thing.
Yeah. Get on, do the job, and enjoy the experience of doing it. So, on a practical level, where would you, if I or others want to focus attention on improving their gigging kind of possibilities and stuff like that, where are the sort of main areas that you would say focus your attention on these? I mean, you are, as you've taught, you're an educator anyway. It's like kind of, what do you see as kind of those key areas that really are crucial, that might not be the obvious ones? Like, it might not be, oh, you need to sit down and practice all your scales and modes every day. It's like, where do you think you get the best bang for your buck, basically?
Well, in terms of where you put your time,
I
think certainly practice doesn't necessarily mean spending hours in the woodshed learning scales. It might just mean getting really on top of the songs you've got to learn. the material. That's probably the main thing. So that, you know, because most pop music isn't hard. I mean, if you go down that route and you want to play jazz fusion, that's a different animal completely. But most pop music, it's straightforward. It's not easy. It's straightforward, but you've got to know it, and be prepared for stuff might change. You know, and I think, you know, if I think about all the most educational times I've had, they've been the most uncomfortable and slightly humiliating sometimes as well. But you know, that's if you want to get better, that's how it is. So in terms of where you put your time, I mean, I think it's a given that everyone can play well, and if it's you know, if it's a style or that you don't know, then just get into it, and that could just be listening to it a lot, but like a lot, not just a couple of tunes, like have it on repeat for weeks,
days,
weeks and weeks. If you've got time. I mean, sometimes you get the cool few days, don't you? But so I don't think there's no kind of silver bullet. Otherwise, I'm sat here with a swimming pool behind me, and it'd be much easier. But just be a really safe pair of hands. You know, like really be on top of stuff. And I know certainly one gig I didn't get once. Well, it wasn't put up for it, and you know, it turned out the person who did it was like, yeah, they really, really knew their stuff. They really had it down. And you think, okay, well, not only are people playing at this level of, you know, skill, but they're really putting the work in and they're hungry for it. You've got to remember that. So it's about trying to be at least there in terms of the playing, and then, you know, the other stuff we were talking about. You know, kind of looking the part, not kind of, you know, not overstepping the mark socially, that kind of thing. I think, so it's hard to say where in terms of time management or what you should do. I think for Gen X like me, it's all word of mouth from what I know. So just kind of don't ever take any gig for granted, I think. And because actually a lot of the best connections I've made have been on little functions or something, you know.
That's cool.
And I think now because functions pay so well, the way the industry, you meet a lot of great musicians on those. So
yeah, I suppose that's true. I mean, a lot of the people that I know all do function gigs on the side. You know, they might all the sort of like the professional musicians I know, they do, you know, that function gigging is a sort of like, I don't want to say necessary evil, because that's not really fair, because it's kind of, you know, some of them could be really good, but it's like, you know, it's a very valid kind of additional income.
I mean, it's always been frowned upon historically in the music industry, but because the music industry has changed so much in the last 20 years, they're some of the best paying gigs, and the joy of them is they're the least pressure. So the great thing about them is there's no pressure. The worst thing about them is there's no pressure. So if you do that too much, it can send you a bit doolally, because you think, oh man, I want to be under pressure and do a gig. But you're probably earning more from that than you would if you're doing the right kind of functions. You know, the players are always great, the money's great, but you know, the trade-off is the crowd aren't there to see you; they just want to be entertained. You know, where if you're playing for a band or an artist, people are paying at the door, and they want to, and they want to watch. Or they want to watch you on their phones, whatever kind of gig it is.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, that's, I mean, and also I suppose the thing is like when you do, just to focus on those function gigs for a little bit, it's like you can be pretty certain that there are probably a whole bunch of songs that will come up all the time that, you know, it's like, you know, I know that, you know, I play in two or three covers band, and every single one of them plays Venus. And there's a whole stack of
but
other
of course
bits
the weird thing is none of the ones I do play that, you know, and it's you never know enough songs. But I think if you're playing with the right people and everyone's good, and there's a bit of freedom, you can have a bit of a jam. It's fun. It's, you know, it's great money, and you know, there's no pressure, so enjoy it. It's kind of catharsis. Try your favorite licks, and then behave yourself when you do other gigs.
And so, do you find with the function stuff that you know, it's about, is it about kind of learning bass lines note for note, or is it just kind of like, can you get away with just a little bit of kind of artistic freedom within there, as long as you stick within, you know, sensibly within the confines of the genre?
It depends who you're playing for, you know, and if bands are running track, your hands are pretty tied. You've got to behave to play what's there. It depends what the band is. I mean, some bands and band leaders want it exactly as it is. Others want it kind of wide open. So it depends what kind of player you are and what the demand is and how much they're paying you. The more they're paying you, the more whatever they want, I think, is the answer.
That's true.
And certainly if you're meeting people for the first time, you want to just do the job and not mess around too much, I think, is probably the answer.
So to go back to one of the points you made just earlier, these are sort of like, we need to develop those soft skills as well. So it's like, it's the net, things like, I'm used to it, used to it coming out of corporate world where you talk about networking and stuff like that, but using if every gig is an opportunity to network to get to the next gig in a way, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on your character. I know musicians who've done really well and networked since, 20 years ago when I first met them, and they were sort of quite network heavy and that was their thing. I always found it tricky when I lived in London. I just couldn't sort of do the social thing that much, but certainly on gigs, don't burn any bridges. And I think the longer you do it, the more everyone you're playing with is a sort of nice human being. So they wouldn't have been doing it for 15, 20 years if they weren't, So that's it really. I think it just don't be a problem to hang out with, or if you've got a 5-hour car journey, then where you can chat for that long.
No, I had that. I had that recently actually when I did a sort of mini tour with a mate of mine's band, and sort of driving down from London to sort of like onto the south coast and stuff, Margate and stuff. So it's a long old drive, and you've got to sit in the car with people, and you've got to be able to have conversations. Yeah, which but you've got to be able to then have conversations over multiple car journeys as well. Yeah. So that's kind of
exactly.
Yeah. But so I suppose one thorny kind of question is because I know when I look into this question, I get a lot of people's, basically what I'm going to ask you is kind of how important is your gear? Because, you talk to people, some people go, it's just like, because for example, I'm rambling a little bit, it'll become coherent in a minute. So the bass that I played for 35 years was a wow. And most, people go, oh God, that's it's completely inaccessible, unaffordable. When I bought it was 650 quid, which, you think, but that was a long time ago. But so, so there is this school of thought of going, well, you don't need to spend that much money on a bass, just buy a Squire or something like that. It's like, actually, genuinely, what do you think?
Well, I've got a problem with gear in that I can't stop buying basses, but not. I don't have loads. It's normally one in, one out. I think I think it's finally settled down these last few years. But I think for what I do, and people I work with, they generally just want to hear a Fender sound. If I'm really, I mean, I'd love to have a wow. Don't get me wrong. Some great bass I've done on those, but I think I tend to take usually just a P bass or a jazz. Love playing fretless. Got a couple of fretlesses, Stingray and another Fender. But really, I think gear is important. Like if you're a guitarist, producers probably want to see a Strat or a Tele, maybe a Les Paul, depending what it is, or at least if it's not one of them, if it's not a jazz, if it's not a P, or maybe a Stingray, it's sort of a posh version of one of them, really. So I think I would love to see lots of students who just have one bass and lots of players who've always had one bass forever. I'd love to be like that. But it depends what kind of personality you are. I know some incredible players that are happy with like one instrument that be that great, but they're so good that it suits them, or whatever you put in their hands just sounds great anyway.
Yeah.
But I think it's important. I've never been into effects or pedals, so I'm not the one about that. But for me, whenever I've gone into a gig or a session with a Fender, the engineer or whoever's the artist, they're just happy. It just sounds like what they've listened to all their lives, which is like 90% of recorded music,
Yeah, well, that's probably it. It's more about the fact that that's what they're used to, and that's what people turn up with. And Fenders are ubiquitous. I mean, I don't particularly like them. I find them a bit sort of flimsy.
Right. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? But I suppose for me, the thing is, if you picked any classic track, it's probably a Fender. So that's the thing. I think it's sort of it just works in mixes. and engineers and producers know how to work with them. But that said, lots of great players come in with all kinds of exotic things. Dingwalls are great; they sound really good.
Yeah.
Lots of great modern work really well. But it's whatever suits your personality, whatever feels right in your hands, isn't it? That's the other.
Yeah. No, the interesting thing is I went from the WAL, which I kind of passed on not that long ago, to I built myself a P bass, and that's kind of like the first P bass I played was probably in the mid to late 80s. And it just felt like a
tree.
A tree. Yeah, it did. It did. It was like literally you could have taken it out as a weapon. It was kind of solid. And that, I mean, I suppose the sort of differentiation at that point was I was playing a JD, which is like, I mean, those incredibly kind of slim necks. But that thing itself that wasn't the greatest of basses. I think they were going through a bit of a QA problem at that point. But so I'd always been really disparaging about P basses until I went to record in what was Mike Oldfield's old studio with his son Luke, and Luke had his dad's old 64 P bass.
And I picked it up. The one in the photos, is that?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a red one, I think. And it's like, I picked it up and I played it and I went, it just completely changed my mind about that. And so I went off and then built myself, styled on that sort of 64 it's kind of a flat C-shaped neck. So it's really slim neckline. So to completely change, but that basically completely changed my mind about P basses. So I now have a P bass. I have a P bass and a Stingray, my two main basses. And I'd feel that I need some sort of jazz bass.
I think you do.
You know,
just
to kind of round everything off.
I'm going to say yes, you do need one tomorrow.
I'll go in and tell my wife that. It says Russell said I need to buy a jazz bass.
I really do sneak them in, like the sort of standing bass players and guitarists joke. I sort of sneak them in, get them delivered around and that kind of thing. Hang it on the wall every now and then, so it looks like it's been there for a long time.
Well, it's that old kind of it's the old joke, isn't it? It's like I'm terrified that if I die, my wife's going to sell my guitars for what I told her I bought them for.
Exactly that.
Yeah. But anyway, so I'm gonna wrap this up with kind of one final question. Really, it's like, so if you were able to stand next to your old self, what bit of advice would you give them about kind of progressing through the music industry as a player?
I think it changes so much, year on year, and depending on what age they are. If they were young, I haven't got a clue because I can't really. We're so far removed from 24, not just in terms of it being 30 years, but their universe is a bit different. I think if I look back when I was starting out, I was always thinking there was going to be some end point where you'd be there with the pool and you'd be in the biggest band in the world. Whereas in reality, I don't regret anything, but I think I could have enjoyed the journey a bit more. In all the shit clubs and hanging out with sort of people who weren't necessarily the best musicians in the world, but they could play, and it was just a great fun hang. And you were traveling and seeing things, and even though you weren't doing stadiums or arenas, that was the kind of gold actually. And I think part of me back then was always thinking, oh, what's next? Where am I going from here? But actually just enjoy the moment. It doesn't mean being paid millions of pounds. It's just about playing great music with great people, and having a bit of an adventure. That's what it's about.
And I remember one very wise musician saying to me, if you can't enjoy playing in front of 20 people, you're never going to enjoy playing in front of 20,000 people.
Yeah.
It's like, kind of like, you've just got to drink all of it in and love all of it for what it is, and enjoy and love playing music for what it is.
Yeah. I remember, thinking, any pub gig was like, oh, just want to get out of this scene. And now, me and all the guys I play with, we're like, oh, if anything comes in, in a pub gig, we're like, come on, let's have some of that again. It's a bit of a treat now, which is stupid. 25 years ago, or whatever, pubs were like, "Oh, I'm above that." You know, it's like, no, those are the best gigs.
Yeah. No pressure. Yeah. They're kind of the no pressure gigs, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, just have fun.
Excellent. Well, I think that's just have fun. What else? A perfect way to kind of wrap things up. Russell, lovely talking to you. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.